Joining me now is former prosecutor Charles Coleman, Jr., who is a civil rights attorney, MSNBC legal analyst, and host of the Charles Coleman podcast. And Charles, great to see you. Key findings here. Officers routinely used excessive force even when there was no force necessary, disproportionately stopped Black and Native American people, patrolled differently based on race. And in 19 police shootings, a significant portion were unconstitutional. There was even stories of police officers responding to somebody saying, "I can't breathe," by saying, "Yes, you can breathe, you're talking." Your thoughts on this finding and on the fact that it was done at all?
Well, first off, Joy, we do have to acknowledge Kristen Clarke and the work that she's done as the head of the Civil Rights Division at DOJ, because progress is relative, and under a different administration, we may not have even seen this. Now that we've gotten that out the way, I have to be very candid. When are we going to broaden the conversation and make this a discussion around the ills in American policing? If you recall, Joy, it was about a year ago that we were talking about a very similar report coming out of Louisville, Kentucky. If you swap these reports and you pretty much redacted the city, you would not be able to tell the difference from one city to the next. Where I'm going with this is we cannot continue to treat these things as though they are discrete occurrences occurring in just different pockets of America. This is much more representative of a systemic issue within American policing that has to be addressed on a culture and a policy level. And until we broaden that conversation and make this discussion more meaningful and get to the root of this, we're going to continue to watch the same movie over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the number of cities that are already under consent decree: Louisville, Baltimore, Chicago, Cleveland, New Orleans, Newark, Ferguson, still under one, Albuquerque, Seattle, which is considered now compliant. But I mean, the thing is, we now have, and I'm glad you acknowledged Kristen Clarke, under the Trump, for his first attorney general, Jeff Sessions, they stopped doing consent decrees. They changed the rules and said, we're just not even going to do it at all. So the fact they're doing it at all is important. But what does it mean in your view that we're still doing these individual responses, as you said, but we can't pass a George Floyd Act to hit that national conversation you're talking about?
Well, I think it's part of us. Part of it is how we're socialized to look at police, Joy. I think that a lot of it has to do with the idea that it is very difficult for us to accept the notion that American policing is rooted in a system and a model of violence and aggression rather than that of service and protection, because of everything that we're told about police, everything that we're taught to believe about police. But the reality is that different communities and different people in America, specifically Black people, marginalized people, people who are pushed outside of the center of America, are oftentimes experiencing policing in a very, very different way. And that's a reality that we have to actually come to grips with. I'm of the belief, Joy, that going into 24, into this election cycle, anyone who purports to care about these communities where people are courting votes has to commit themselves to reviving the notion of police reform. That has to be negotiable.
Let's quickly talk about the Tree of Life mass shooting. The sentencing phase has begun. There was a guilty verdict in that case. Fascinating argument by the public defender for the shooter, trying to get out, frankly, of the death penalty by saying that he wasn't killing Jews because of religion, but rather because, quote, he believed they were bringing in immigrants who were committing genocide against white people and children. None of this makes sense. None of this is true. But this is what Mr. Bauer believed to be real and true. So basically saying he's an out of his mind racist, not anti-Jewish, to try to stay alive. 11 people were murdered. 11 counts of obstructing the exercise of religious beliefs.
You know, I think there's a such thing as creative lawyering, and then I think it's just some things that is borderline ethically irresponsible. I realize that you have an obligation as an attorney to mount as vigorous a defense for your client as you can, but to sort of play this game when you're talking about why your client did such a heinous thing that he's now been convicted of at the expense of, again, adding more pain and discomfort to the families that they have been affected, I just find to be reprehensible from the standpoint of being an attorney and understanding that there are difficult times that you have to construct arguments on behalf of your clients, but this was not the way to go.
Yeah, as somebody who opposes the death penalty, I find it morally repugnant that someone has to try to make an argument to keep the state from killing someone and make a wild argument like that. That's just my personal opinion. Charles Coleman, thank you very much.